Welcome back. Great show. You know, we were just talking about the connection between the employment rate, between wages and real estate, and it is a factor that I do think gets overlooked sometimes. It is such a connecting factor that isn't about necessarily who's buying the houses. Or I guess it's all about who's buying the houses. It's not about how much houses are selling for. It's really about the people who are going to move into them. And one of the things that happens before companies hire new employees is, well, they probably need a place for that person to sit, or they need a place to hold the new cars, the new inventory. Matt Hagen joins us, Senior Vice President and partner with Kidder Matthews, who specializes in industrial, office, and high-tech leasing and sales in Puget Sound's East Side and North End markets. Well, first of all, welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Ben.
How you doing?
Doing well.
All right. You got you're dressed up, dapper. You know, it's radio. You know, you look like you're ready to go on some fancy television show.
Just a game uniform.
Matt, talk a little bit about Kidder Matthews, your role there, and how a commercial broker can almost gauge a little bit in what's going on in the employment world.
No problem. Kidder Matthews is the largest commercial real estate services firm in the Pacific Northwest. We have over 140 brokers and 5 offices in Washington. And we're also the largest property management firm of commercial properties in the Puget Sound region, managing over 23 million square feet of space. In terms of being able to determine where companies are in their growth cycles, we do a lot of forecasting and prospecting ourselves. We're talking to a lot of companies. We're constantly juggling transactions and deals. And we're always talking to decision makers. And one of the first things we ask them is how business is going. And depending on the reaction of that decision maker really dictates the direction of the conversation we have with them as far as their facilities go.
Sounds a little bit like reading in between the lines. You know, you talk to a business owner, how's business going?
Precisely. Absolutely. And we learn a lot of things about what's going on in the macro and micro markets that these companies are in. We deal primarily in industrial, high-tech, and office inventory, at least my particular business model does. And we deal with a lot of tenants as well as landlords. And one of the questions that we always ask them is how they forecast their business in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And one of the things we've seen that's a lot different than what we saw maybe in early 2009 when everybody thought capitalism was going to fail is that a lot of them are starting to feel good about the economy. It seems that consumer confidence has been restored in the private sector with a lot of these folks hiring more people, increasing inventories, working additional shifts, etc. And so we'd say that overall the mood is a lot better as the economy is recovering.
And that, you know, we talked about confidence in the last segment with Michael, and the mood. I think it's interesting you say just the mood. Mm-hmm. Because that plays a huge role. It's the perception of what's going on. I mean, you can forecast all you want, but it kind of comes back to that confidence and the way that some of these numbers make people feel in order to make these big decisions.
Exactly. And, you know, one of the things we've been seeing a lot in the last 18 months is an increase in demand from the owner-user market. The SBA has been very aggressive, and, you know, interest rate terms have been very attractive over the last 18 months as it correlates with pricing expectations of sellers. It seems that, you know, a lot of folks that are looking to sell their buildings realize it's not 2008 anymore, and you can't get that premium price for your real estate.
So when people can now, we talk about owner users, the people who are actually buying buildings to move their companies into.
Correct.
When you talk about that, that would really suggest that people who are really confident enough to, A, the real estate may be a good investment, not just something to move into, mm-hmm. and B, they can actually hire people or create, manufacture more stuff, whatever it may be. It kind of seems like it's on 2 factors that they would be feeling good about that, about real estate and their business.
Absolutely, and the fact that money is relatively cheap, historically speaking. A lot of times when you've got a tenant that's in the marketplace and they weigh the costs and benefits between leasing space and owning their own real estate, the interest rate plays a huge role in that consideration and determination if they want to proceed with a lease or actually own their own real estate.
What what are some of the companies right now that you see expanding in this kind of growth mode?
Well, in terms of sectors, the aerospace sector is doing very well, in particular in North Kingstown, Snohomish County, as well as down in the Kent Valley. You also see a lot of high-tech growth as far as technology-oriented companies. those are the two big drivers on a local level that I think is really driving some of the growth and positive absorption we've seen in vacancy rates.
Do you think that this is more, you talk about aerospace, high tech, is that a Seattle area, Puget Sound thing, or nationally is that also happening?
I think to a certain degree it might be happening nationally, but I think in particular it's happening in the Pacific Northwest more than throughout the country. We've got the benefit of having some great companies like Amazon.com, Microsoft, Boeing in the region, and right now those industries that those folks specialize in is really driving job growth. I mean, you go to the Midwest, and I think it's still, while things are probably improving, it's still kind of a doom and gloom mentality. We've done some market surveys for our clients in other markets that are outside the Pacific Northwest, and we're shocked by some of the information we see as far as high vacancy rates, low prices per square foot, et cetera.
So what do you see? What do you see that as the driver, I guess, in Seattle?
Well, I'd say it's the sectors that those companies are in, as far as the aerospace, the tanker contract, the demand in the 787. Those are big factors. Amazon.com, all the different business segments that they're getting themselves involved in, the Kindle, the Fire, et cetera. It's causing a significant increase in the headcounts that they need and corresponding to the amount of office space they need. I mean, Amazon is probably one of the single most important drivers to the recovery of the downtown Seattle office market.
And they continue to grow, Amazon.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, speculation is that they're going to add another 3 to 4 million square feet in the marketplace.
How much is that? Is that like a whole tower?
It's
like my house is like 3,000 square feet. So give me 4 million. How big is that?
Based on the some of the recent press, that 4 million square feet could be 4 or 5 towers, mid-rise towers, not like the Columbia Center, but definitely substantial
like buildings in Bellevue. I mean,
exactly.
So I mean, those are huge.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you get the construction. There's a lot going on with positive things for the economy.
A lot of ancillary benefits. A lot of this increased demand in space is going to create construction jobs. It's going to create all kinds of different opportunities for folks that are looking for work to be able to capture that work.
And I guess, as you said, just this kind of ripple effect.
Absolutely, there's a multiplier. They say a rising tide raises all ships, and I think that this can definitely be attributed to that type of scenario.
Do you see this continuing then? I mean, you talked a little bit about there is still some uncertainty.
There definitely is. I mean, in general, I think America's mind is fairly short term, but I think a lot of people still see the impacts from what happened in 2008 and into 2009. And so I think people, while they're optimistic, I think they're a little bit more cautious than they would have been in the past.
And which is okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's okay to be a little bit more cautious and not just assume everything's going to be perfect. I know that we all kind of got caught up in that at one point in time or another.
Sure.
What do you think about, again, we're here with Matt Hagen, Senior Vice President and partner of Kidder Matthews, and, talking a little bit about how the commercial real estate is such a big influence on what's going on in residential real estate, simply because of the amount of jobs and the amount of people that it ends up producing in an area. Matt, I want to keep talking about the South Lake Union kind of phenomenon. You talk about 4 million square feet. What size is an office? I mean, what's an average office, like a cubicle? 20 square feet, 30 square feet? I mean, how many people do you fit in 4 million square feet?
You can fit a lot. It all depends on, if they have a lot of
4 million standing up, right? Just straight up.
Kind of rule of thumb for a lot of typical office users, it's about, 3 employees to 4 employees per 1,000 square feet of space. And so if you take those ratios, that's a lot of people.
It's about 12,000 if my math is right in my head.
That sounds about right. Maybe shooting from the hip.
Yeah, so maybe it's 12,000. But I mean, that's a lot of people. I mean, if you just consider how many houses there are, how many places there are to live, 12,000 people coming in.
Well, sure,
potentially coming in. I mean,
and if you're talking about the Amazon in general, those are typically higher paying jobs. Which again, those folks are going to have more disposable income. Typically, they're going to want to own their own homes, and that's definitely positive. It's not the $8 an hour greeter position.
That's what we we love greeters.
Yeah, exactly.
They're nice. Matt, just one more question before we have to go to break. You talk about people actually becoming more bold, and they're actually willing to make these decisions. Is that Is it just not feel like a gamble, or do you think people just want to get back into the market? Do you think there's
I think it's dictated by the demand that their business requires.
Which is better.
Exactly. A lot of these companies, they're waiting until they absolutely are busting at the seams to make decisions when it comes to their facilities, or they've got enough orders and they're doing well enough where they feel comfortable enough to take on the additional risk.
And I mean, certainly, I think everybody knows a company that's busting at the seams. I mean, I know at our office we had 3 or 4 people in each little office and off-site parking, and I think there was a little bus that drove people back and forth at one point in time.
Exactly. That's always a good sign.
Yeah. Well, Matt, thanks so much for joining us. You're going to stick around for a little bit. We'll bring you back, talk about a little bit more about what's going on and in the markets. When we come back, Ryan Leopold's going to join us. Most people think, hey, the Fed meets tomorrow. Well, maybe most people don't think about that. People do think the Fed controls mortgage rates. We're going to talk to you about all the different things that affect mortgage rates. My name is Ben Brash, and that was Matt Hagen. You're listening to Brashonomics.